Appreciate you put that.
Good morning, everybody. Okay, I am not on mute. Fantastic. I'd like to welcome everyone to the United Way's Good Point series. My name is Courtney Murphy, and I'm one of the co-chairs of the Bridges Society, the Regional Bridges Society, along with Laura Miller. And we've been working in this position for a couple of years now. There's a pandemic in there, so the time is sort of stretchy, but we've been doing this for a few years and are very excited about both the Good Point series and the Bridges Society and its growth regionally. Welcome to our new members. We're very excited to have you, and welcome back to anybody who has been a member in the past and has rejoined us again for this year. If you have been a member in the past and haven't had the opportunity to renew your membership, or you're a guest that has joined us from outside the Bridges community and are interested in becoming a member, please take a look at our chat. There is some contact information in there for folks who would be happy to talk to you more about membership and the benefits and how you go about making that happen before the United Way campaign closes on April 30th. So, I am very excited to welcome Dr. Josie Badger to our event today. I hope you share this excitement and are very excited to hear about what she has to say to us. If you have any questions or comments for Dr. Badger, the chat window is open and you are welcome to share thoughts, ask questions, observations, anything like that. So Dr. Badger brings with her a very impressive bio that I'm going to share with you now. She received her bachelor's degree from Geneva College in disability law and advocacy. She has a master's from the University of Pittsburgh, my alma mater, in rehabilitation counseling, and a doctorate from Duquesne in healthcare ethics. Separate from that impressive academic record, she was crowned Miss Wheelchair America in 2012. In 2014, Josie founded J. Badger Consulting, where she provides youth development and disability consulting services for organizations on transition and leadership development. She is the National Transition Director for SPAN Parent Advocacy Network, working with RAISE and the National Healthcare Transition Center for Youth with IDDD. She's the campaign manager for United Way of Southwestern Pennsylvania's I Want to Work campaign to improve the employment and employment prospects for people with disabilities. She's the lead field organizer for the Family Care Act that supports paid family leave. She's the developer of TRAIL, T-R-A-I-L, a statewide advocacy and lobbying training program. She's a board member for the United Way of Southwestern Pennsylvania, the Woodlands Foundation, the Mary Grace Hospice Foundation, PA Assistive Technology Foundation, and is the secretary of FISA, a co-chair of the grants committee. So with that impressive resume in mind, on everyone's mind, I'm happy and proud, pleased to introduce Dr. Josie Badger.
Okay, good morning, everyone. I have officially removed the squeaky toy from my dog, and beyond her potentially causing me problems later, because I removed her favorite toy, I think we're all good to go. So good morning. Thank you all for starting to put your roles and why you're here in the chat. That's really appreciated. And I want today to be as dialogue-y as possible. So because I have a doctorate, I'm allowed to make up words. That's a rule. So, you know, if you like make up words, you need to get your doctorate to do that. So if there's any chance or any time that you have a question, either raise your hand, put it in the chat. I would love to you know, just do that as well. So some of you I know very well, and it's wonderful to see you guys. I've had some wine outings with some of you, all of you, I wish I had wine outings with. So, you know, it's great to have some time here in the morning with all of you. So I think today, as I'm looking through what you all are sharing with me, I want to start from the beginning, because from what I know about you, what I know about this group and the great work that it is doing, a lot of you are really on your beginning steps to your professions. And professions aren't everything. I was just talking, if you were on early, about animals, and didn't she find another squeaky toy? That little turd. I told you not to do that. My apologies. She knew I was on a call today. She got her doctorate at the same time I did. So she's a smart little turd. So animals were my passion, but not always are our passions exactly where our vocations or callings are. Sometimes we have to separate them. Fortunately for me, mine overlap, and so I have this amazing honor and privilege of being able to serve within my calling as well. So I think for a lot of us, especially those of you who are just starting your professional jobs, or because of our generation, you might be between professions and changing a few more times in your life. So even if you've been working in the field for 20 years, you still could have a few more jobs ahead of you. And so I want to talk a little bit today about calling, about vocation, and about what I do, and how all of you could help with the work we do, especially through this great work that you're doing through Bridges. So if you signed up, which you did, you know that I'm a person with disability. I've had a disability since birth, and I'm the only person in my family that has a disability, even though it's genetic. And there's very, very few people that have what I have. When I was diagnosed at age 11, there were 8 other people that have what I have. So growing up, I didn't know other people with disabilities. I didn't have role models with disabilities. I'm a kid of the 80s. So there weren't really TV shows, and there still aren't many, but there were none growing up of people with disabilities or with characters with disabilities. I was mainstreamed, included in regular ed classes. So I didn't know kids with disabilities there. And so the only connection that I had with disability was I knew that if anything was brought up about my disability, so my ventilator, my wheelchair, muscle fatigue, it was in a negative connotation. It meant if we were talking about it, I was having a problem. So whether that be keeping up in school or at the doctor's. And so in my mind, that meant that disability was bad and negative, and that I needed to do everything I could to not be affiliated with disability. Melly, come here. I squirt you. My apologies, guys, for having some behavioral problems today. So we when I was in school, I was in the same school district that my parents taught. And so I had the privilege of them being able to handpick my teachers. They knew the teachers that would support me and the ones that wouldn't. And that was wonderful. But even having that ability, the insider knowledge, I still had barriers. There was still discrimination / a lack of knowledge about me, about disability, and teachers thinking that dealing with a student with disability was just a burden. It was just one more thing that they had to deal with. And I remember, and I didn't know this at the time, but I'm really glad I didn't, but going into 5th or 6th grade, my uncle was on the school board. Here's the perks of being in a small town. And there was this future I was getting ready to have in the fall. And he called my uncle on the school board and said he wanted to discuss concerns he had with having me in his room. And I would say, by the grace of God, he accidentally didn't hang up the phone, and he went off on how awful it would be to have a kid with disability in his room, and how I wouldn't be anything but a problem, and why would they put people with disabilities in his room? He has enough he has to do. The reason I say it was a blessing was people with disabilities have enough to deal with, especially kids. They have enough dealing with peers that they don't need a teacher who also doesn't want them in the room. And so fortunately, we were able to address it before I was in that hostile environment. But the reason I bring that up is we as people with disabilities are still constantly facing not only stigma, but direct discrimination too. As it's usually not hateful. Very rarely is it hateful, but it's their more work. They're not competent. They can't make decisions. They're going to be a problem. They're going to be a legal issue. And so when I go to, a doctor's office or something, and they look at me and all they see is my wheelchair and my ventilator, I know that there's a power issue there. And I know that to be able to be heard, it's going to be important to be able to help them see that we're on the same playing field. So often I'll introduce myself as Dr. Badger as well. But I think what I wanted to share with all of that is, growing up, I thought disability was bad, and for multiple reasons, as you can see. And so I tried my hardest to pretend I wasn't disabled. I would park my scooter outside the classroom. I would have my nurse sit outside. I wouldn't use my ventilator because I knew the more disabled I looked, the more disabled people treated me. And I wanted to just be Josie, not the girl in the wheelchair, the girl with a nurse. And that was good because I developed my sense of self, my identity, and knew what I could do. The bad part is I pretended to be someone that I wasn't. I didn't embrace my whole identity. And I think I missed out on a lot as a kid because I spent so much time trying to be someone else that I didn't have the energy to be me. So that's where my calling comes into play here. So growing up, I wanted to be an aquatic biologist, and I think some of that comes from SeaWorld, and watching all the dolphins jumping. Some of it is my love for animals, but then there's this huge issue that I wasn't looking at my whole being and thinking about, what was I made to do? What are my strengths, my gifts, my passions? And that's where I hope all of you are. I hope all of you have learned about your gifts, your passions, and how those can play into your vocation. But I hadn't until I was about 18 years old. And my mom dragged me to a disability leadership conference for young adults with disabilities. And the first night of that event, I remember sitting in a hotel conference room surrounded by like 30 or 40 youth with disabilities. And I had pictured going into this event a bunch of people just sitting around complaining about their lives. And instead of that, I saw people who were empowered by their experience, empowered by what made them different or quote unquote broken. And that changed my life in literally 5 minutes. I all of a sudden knew what I was made to do. Not everyone has that moment, I get that. But I do believe we all get glimpses into what we're supposed to be doing. And so from that time, I got really involved in disability youth leadership because I wanted other people to have a similar experience to what I did. So I was able to start getting involved and then start taking leadership roles. And what I've realized since then was every little experience helped me grow and take on larger experiences and opportunities. And I don't think I would be where I was today without each of those smaller experiences. So I ended up going to college about 20 minutes from my parents' house. And so I wouldn't have to switch nurses, doctors, any of that. And I could live on campus with the nurses and all my supports. And that changed my life. For the first time, I had to advocate for myself. I had to hire peers to provide care. I had to guide my own care. And that allowed me to then move to Pittsburgh to eventually buy my own house, get married, all of those adulty things. But let me talk a little bit about my path with United Way and hashtag I went to work. I'm sorry, I'm getting over a kid cold. My nephew, who's 10 months, his way of showing love is to put his fingers in your mouth. And he brought germs home from Texas and has shared them very, very well with all the ones he loves. So in 2014, I was summoned by Mary Hartley, who some of you may know, to a coffee date, which always means something's up. And so I went and I was offered this position as campaign manager of hashtag I want to work. And I had other jobs at that time. I wasn't really looking, but this sounded like an amazing opportunity. At that point, I wanted nothing to do with politics. I mean, in high school government, I passed the tests, but I didn't work to retain any of that knowledge. And now I really wish I would have. So I started that job and fell in love with it. And this was under United Way. I realized within that position the amount that legislation impacts our lives as people with disabilities in a very more intimate way than it does for a lot of other people. I realized that people, legislators, who often didn't know people with disabilities were making decisions that would affect our mere survival, not just, what we could do or the amount we paid for gas, but whether we were able to live at home, whether we were allowed to work. And they often made these decisions with no previous experience with people with disabilities. And so that's where all of this came together. In one of those initial meetings I had, I was talking to a legislator and I was all dressed in my Sunday best, we'll say. Had my one pagers, my business cards, came in to talk about like a bill with numbers and data. And the legislator was so taken aback about my disability that really he didn't care that much about the bill. He wanted to know what was wrong with me. And those are the words he used. And so in that moment, I realized that I'm still back in 4th grade with that teacher who, because of his ignorance, didn't want me to be there. Now, this legislator didn't mean to say, I don't want you there, but he couldn't see past my disability to see the experience, the knowledge, what I was bringing to the table. And so what that brought to me was the knowledge that I had a responsibility and a wonderful opportunity to change that for legislators, to make sure that legislators couldn't have that excuse again to make decisions about me without me. And that United Way was poised to help make those connections between people with disabilities, real issues that are facing us and legislators. And there are not a lot of entities that can do that just because of funding, positions, they just can't do that. And so that's where hashtag I want to work really bloomed from, and a lot of my work since then. So hashtag I want to work has partners all over the state of people with disabilities and professionals of families. And we work to change or create legislation that will improve the employment outcomes of people with disabilities. We have now gotten 3 bills unanimously passed that all improve the employment opportunities for people with disabilities. The first one really focused on making sure that students in high school who have disabilities could have paid employment opportunities before they graduated. The second one worked to ensure that Pennsylvania was in a position to make sure that people with disabilities had the primary goal of being employed in the community, making at least minimum wage, instead of putting them in sheltered workshops or day programs, that their first goal was paid employment. And then the last one we did a year ago, a little bit less than, was to make sure that people with disabilities could work and still get insurance, medical assistance, that they could work and earn and save and not be afraid of losing the insurance that allows them to live at home and work. So that is where we've been. Our next steps is we're working across the House and Senate to develop a caucus that will bring together Republicans and Democrats in both chambers on employment for people with disabilities. So it'd be an ongoing caucus that will bring people together that care about that issue. And I hope will allow us to discuss barriers, develop legislation, and have a good solid foundation in that, in both chambers. But I think throughout all of this, we need to highlight the importance of having people with disabilities at the table. And one of my friends has said, if you're not at the table, you're on the menu. And that's true. If we do not bring people with disabilities to the table, then we are on the menu to be eaten alive. We need to have a voice. And so that's why this work with United Way is so important, to highlight the importance to bring together people and to connect with legislators. So I'm going to stop there. And I know there were some questions that were submitted, but I also want to encourage you guys that if you have questions, please feel free to put them in the chat.
Morning, everyone. Jesse Sprague, I'm the Director of Regional Impact Initiatives for United Way of Southwestern PA. And I just wanted to thank Josie again for joining us and kind of going through her story and getting us to this point. So thank you, Josie. You spoke a lot about the I Want to Work campaign. I was just curious for the group, if you had any tips or advice on how young professionals like ourselves can get more involved, whether it's on the advocacy or on another level, to try to support the efforts of the campaign.
Absolutely. Thanks, Jesse. So number one, we have, if you Google PA, I want to work, you'll find our website. We're on Facebook, we're on Twitter, I think we're on Instagram. Please follow us and share. We always have stuff going on in social media. I also anticipate more legislation coming up, but I'm really hoping to work with this caucus to identify what they see as barriers and what the disability community does, so that we can come together to develop what the next best steps are. Thank you, Lauren, for throwing that in the chat box. And we're always, of course, looking for funding. We need to be able to support people with disabilities in going to the Capitol and working with legislators. And although people with disabilities make up the largest minority in the world, country, Pennsylvania, we are also the lowest employed. And so we often live in poverty. And so we need to be able to support financially, physically, relationships, people with disabilities, and getting involved in legislation and decision-making processes. So there has to be a lot of support to coordinate those. And so, that's something that I want to work and do. And so whether that be you donating, whether you know some legislator or decision maker and a person with disability that you could connect, please develop those relationships.
Hi, Josie. Thank you so much for sharing your story. That was awesome. And I'm so excited to hear about all the work that you've done with the legislation. My name is Erin Hatley, and I'm an account exec with IST Management and a new member to Bridges and the Women's Leadership Council. So I love being able to learn more about the United Way and all the efforts that you're improving with the I Want to Work campaign. But I know you mentioned that you're working on the caucus, but what other upcoming projects do you have that you're most excited about?
That's a great question. Thank you. So a few things are going on. So there's always stuff with United Way, but there, I work multiple jobs since I have my own business. So one thing that I'm working on is hosting governor forums for Democrat and Republican candidates regarding disability related issues. So we have Mr. White, his name's David, presenting the week of April 11th. And we also have Melissa Hart speaking on April 28th. We already had General Shapiro speak. So I think that getting to know what the candidates believe, regardless of your political affiliation, is important, since we are the largest minority in the state. And so, please listen for announcements about these forums. They're not through United Way, but I think we all should be aware of what these people believe and who our leadership in our state is going to be. There are some bills that are in both the House and Senate in the state that are really important. One of them is on changing tables for adults. For a lot of individuals with either intellectual or physical disabilities, not only is it a problem to utilize restrooms, but if an individual cannot use the facilities, changing tables can be very, very helpful. But very few of them are large enough for adults. And so there's legislation that's been introduced that would promote larger places that are being built to include adult changing tables, and that would be so helpful to allow people with disabilities and families to go and be involved in the community and not be worried about needing to go home if something happens and they need to use the bathroom. So that's a big bill. There's another bill that's out there by Representative Miller and Jess Benham that is about establishing a disability office at the state level, which would sort of be the hub of disability related issues, of bills. And so I'd really recommend that, if you see these bills come through, whether it be an email or Facebook, to contact your legislator and tell them that you support it, because those individual contacts are what gets legislation passed. It's not, the letters from big entities. All those are helpful. It's about the support of each constituent reaching out, encouraging people to sign on the bills. So, thank you. Okay, I see a question in the chat. Oh, good question, Molly. I'm still reading. Hold on. Yeah, let's try. Okay, thank you for that question, Molly. Number one, that brings up another bill. There's a bill in the House right now that is sponsored by Representative Ortiz, that is around disability awareness education in general education, and that bill would be so helpful to address more exactly what you're talking about the fact that on any given moment, we are, as people with disabilities or as marginalized people, expected to be able to be educators and advocates at the drop of a hat. And, there are times I just want to go to Walmart to get cereal. I don't necessarily want to be the field trip, However, I think that most people with disabilities would agree that we would rather have you talk to your child, someone else, or talk to yourself, ask us questions versus shushing your child to not ask. Most of us want well-meaning questions. We want kids to not be afraid to ask us stuff, because the more we shush kids, the more they're afraid of us, the more that they see disability as bad and not to talk about. And so we want there to be conversations. We want curiosity, because if we can address curiosity as a child, then they're going to be more accepting as an adult. And that's so important for all of us. So, inclusion and curiosity is good when it's directed right. As for education resources, there's not a great source. I'm going to be very real with you, Molly, but PEAL, which is the Parent Education Advocacy Leadership Center, they have wonderful supports for families and parents, some supports for youth with disabilities, but when it comes to educating the general population about disability-related issues, I would say we have a void. Unless you are a person with a disability, there's not a lot of general education. I think that's a huge problem, because we are pigeonholing These are your problems. These are our problems. And so I think that's a lot of our issues we face in society is that we don't know what's going on in each other's worlds or countries or communities. I would recommend that you contact Dan Miller's office, Representative Dan Miller. I believe they have some listservs that might be helpful as if you want to know more about legislation. I would recommend following Peel on Facebook. I still think there's a huge void of information. Thank you for the Peel Center site. But the best recommendation that I have is to get to know people with disabilities. And I know that sounds awkward if you don't know us, but keep your eyes open for speaking events or engagements. There's always different events at the CLO or different places. And I would just recommend trying to sign up for those events just to start getting engaged with the disability community. So thank you for that question, Molly. Are there other questions? Yeah.
Good morning, Dr. Badger. My name is Bonnie Carter. I work at US Steel. We have several employee resource groups that we are very proud of. I am a secretary of a resource group called Stillability. We focus and educate and promote awareness for our employees with disabilities and or their caretakers. As a mother with 2 special needs children, I do my best to advocate and educate others. With that being said, we're very curious about the I Want to Work and how we can get more involved as a company. We are doing an initiative locally with our ERG is we want to improve our education for hiring, how to educate our managers, how, if someone has a disability, whether it's invisible or not, how do we support that? And with that, we are wanting to promote an intern program where we work with local schools in Pittsburgh to say, hey, we want to put a job career fair together. Any advice or you can shed for our team?
Thank you so much. And there's so many good pieces. And number one, I love both the name of Steel Abilities, but also the work you guys are doing. That's awesome. I believe Dan Miller's wife works there. Am I right? Yeah. Okay. So you have some good resources right there. So couple things. As I mentioned, people with disabilities are the lowest employed population in the world, in Pennsylvania, in Allegheny County. So you have a huge group of trained, educated, ready to work people who want to be working. And we have such a crisis for workers. I would please ask all of you to try to connect with disability community. One, I'd reach out to Office of Vocational Rehab and say, hey, you want to host this? They could probably help you set it up. Reach out to people. I would recommend getting a hold of Bender Consulting, which is another employment connector agency that's in Pittsburgh. And make sure that they're sharing the information. And a lot of school districts, are looking for employment fairs for people with disabilities as well. And so I have an individual, if you're interested, that works in Pittsburgh Public, specifically with kids with disabilities, and I'm sure I can connect you. I'm going to put my email in the box, and any of you are welcome to email me.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. What else? Any other questions?
Hey, Dr. Badger, this is Shawn Robinson. Good to see you. Thank you very much for the talk today. It was very inspirational. I just love hearing you speak. And you've given us some good tips on how to help out. I think everybody on this call wants to do something. That's why
Yeah.
we're interested. You
Yeah.
gave us some good tips. I always think of, sometimes people feel daunted to, take the next step, take the first step, take whatever you want to call it in terms of leading to help advance the initiatives that you have. And you've mentioned some, but I don't know if you just have one that if you could put, is, hey, if everybody could just do this, things would start moving
Mhm.
in the right direction. Do you have anything like that that you
I
could
wish
give
I
us?
had a, that was easy, but when it comes to legislation, thank you for that question. So, is there a one button? No. Let me give you a handful of ways to get started. One, you know, letting me know, whether that be through the email address or through, a way that you would like to get more involved in hashtag I want to work. I could put you to work, no problem. Donating, always helpful. But also developing those relationships and starting that would be look on Facebook, look at Instagram, follow the right pages, um, contact those pages and just say who you want to learn more, where would you go? Um, so, you don't have to stalk a person with a disability in the mall. Not saying I've ever done that, maybe, to get to know them. But, sometimes it's about reaching out and just connecting through social media. A friend of mine, Heather Tomko, who is now serving on United Way committee, she has um, a blog, the Heather Report, where she shares a lot of disability info and is really awesome about sharing her experiences. Follow her. And so I would just say start to become an ally. We don't need saviors. We need allies. We need people to help us get to the table. We need people to help us be heard, and to make sure that people are looking out for the rights of our community. But we don't expect you to know it all. We don't expect you to do it all. We just expect you to be an ally. So thank you, Shawn.
That was great. Thank you.
Thank you so much for all of your thoughts and insights so far, Dr. Badger. We have, I believe, one final question, unless anything appears in the chat, which chat is still open for anyone who has anything they'd like to share. And the final question that we have here is, what are, aside from the human bias factor, which we all know is a significant piece of things, what is the biggest barrier to the interview process? And then what recommendations do you have for overcoming it, both on the sides of the folks interviewing and the folks doing the hiring? And
great question. So humans, create systems that they don't realize are not accessible, whether that be that they make online forms that require you to type everything in, or questions that are not really understandable. They have nothing to do with reading people out of the job, and yet they do. And so I'm going to use just hopefully an example that none of you are associated with, but the civil service in the state, they have tests, they have computer programs that are limiting to people with disabilities, either the way the questions are worded, the systems. And so just the way that they are set up with no wiggle room for accommodations, they weed out people with disabilities who could otherwise do the jobs. And so I would ask everyone to take a step back as you're looking at your processes for hiring. And I know this is beyond the interview, but we people out before they can even get to the interview. And so I would, number one, try to demonstrate in the advertisement that you are looking for people with diversity. So you employ people who have disabilities, that you're willing to provide accommodations and have a way for people with disabilities to connect with a real person if they're struggling with the application. Because either the application will not look very strong or they won't do it. And then for the interview, make it accessible. So I asked them, do you need accommodations to be able to participate? Do you need to do the interview online or, in person? And a lot of the locations for interviews are not really that accessible. And so by just putting it out there that you are willing to provide different accommodations, you're inviting more people to even consider applying for the position. There have been positions that I've hired for that on paper, the people looked okay, but then if I interviewed them, they were rock stars. And so sometimes you just need to give them different ways to present themselves. So thank you for that question.
So has the rise of video interviewing and more remote options due to the pandemic been helpful for that? Or has it sort of been a mixed bag?
Hold on one second. Well, just as you can see, sometimes technology is actually a huge problem, but the new normal, the new normal has changed the world of work to realize that a lot of jobs can be done at home virtually. And so although I'm not seeing the rise of employment for people with disabilities yet, I think that the world is changing to a place more people with disabilities could work from home, could work based on their computer, and that change will open the door for so many. So for a lot of us, transportation is a huge problem, and this could eliminate that barrier. And so allowing people, if they have a disability, if they're immunocompromised, to work from home can be an accommodation that will allow people to remain in their jobs that never was available before.
That will hopefully be a positive development going forward.
Yes.
So.
Any other questions, friends? Wow. Thank you so much for having me this morning.
Well, and thank you for being here, Dr. Badger. Is there anything else you'd like to share with the group before we wrap up?
The only thing I would encourage is just all of you to take that first step, whether it be to follow someone, not follow. That sounds stalkerish. Don't do that. Whether to go on social media and follow someone, to reach out, to decide to get more involved with United Way and donate or volunteer. Take that first step and just get uncomfortable. That's what we're all here to do, is just to get uncomfortable, to find where we can give, where to use our passions, our gifts, our treasures, and that will change lives. So thank you all for being here today.
And thank you for the inspiring and informative stories that you were sharing with us, Dr. Badger. So, and thank you for everyone who was able to join us today and listen to Dr. Badger's wise words and interesting experiences and talk about baby goats. So we're glad you could join us, and we're glad that the Bridges Society is able to offer these kinds of connections with leaders like Dr. Badger and access to events where you can have these kinds of interactions. So we are hoping that if you are a member, you'll stay a member. We're happy to have you. And if this is your first Bridges event and you haven't yet joined us, we would love to provide more information about membership beyond this event. And we would like you to please reach out to our United Way staff. They will be happy to tell you anything you need to know, answer questions, things like that. As we said, we've put some information in the chat. You can also just email bridges@unitedwayswpa.org for more information. Lauren will put that in the chat, and she'll also probably be the person to respond to you if you choose to reach out via email. If there's anyone that you know that you think would be a good fit for Bridges and would benefit from our programming, we would love to have them join our next events. We'd like more events like the Good Point series, upcoming volunteer events, and things like that. So speaking of volunteer events, we do have a park cleanup scheduled for April 24th. We will be, and that's exclusively for Bridges members, and we'll be cleaning up parks. I believe there are 3 parks across our region, so across southwestern Pennsylvania, just sort of to help, shake off the winter mess and be ready for spring and summer to help people get outside and enjoy nature. There's also a food packing event coming up on May 12th. So United Way volunteers will be packing, somewhere around 1,700 food bags for southwestern Pennsylvanians facing food insecurity. Let's see. We also have some Women's Leadership Council events coming up. There is a March mixer and shopping crawl in Zelienople. And if you are interested in joining the Women's Leadership Council, there's also an event on April 7th that the United Way folks will be able to get you more information about as well. And then look for us next fall. The Good Point series will be returning probably around September. We're not positive at this point, but watch your inbox in a couple of months and we'll have more details for that at that point. So please sign up for our newsletter. And again, link in the chat, follow or check in with us on social media. Any of those things can get you connected in as many ways as you're willing to handle. So thank you so much for attending this morning and supporting the United Way and all its important work in our community. We look forward to seeing you at all of our upcoming events. Well, some, all, whatever works for you. And thank you for joining us for such an early meeting, and have a great rest of your Tuesday.